Listen, if you're new to the Lions Den, please keep I want to say please, but if you're new to the Lions Den, keep streaming bigger, keep streaming Ain't No Lover Boy FR, keep streaming because I'm getting bigger and bigger. I'm elevating. Today is a more serious topic. This is episode 5 of my live series, and today we're talking about something very, 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 serious to me, and also serious to other people I know for a very fact, of the matter. Give me 1 second, Lions. I'm waiting for more people to come in the chat. Um, so I really appreciate all the love and all the support on this series. I'm not gonna lie, I wanted to make sure that I was able to come see y'all in person and make sure that I was able to just not see y'all in person, but I want to make sure that I have a set time for y'all to get, to know that I'm here. You can know when to expect me at a certain time. And so, that's what this live, series is about. It's also just about me building, stamina as far as going live and, making sure that no matter what goes on throughout, my day, I still go live. So, yeah, like I said, this topic is very, very, very serious. Listen, it's not so serious to the point where it's just so serious, but it's very serious. Um, so, before I really get into everything, I don't know if it's going to be a long live or anything like that, but what I will say is that I don't need sympathy. I'm not saying anything for sympathy, what's the word for clout. I'm not saying anything for views. I'm saying anything because I'm not saying what I'm saying this for is for the series. It's for the betterment of myself, for my brand, for me, and what I mean by my brand, I mean because my brand is me being authentic. So I'm just giving my Lions people, y'all the backside scoop of my life. Okay, so as a child, how do I put this? Certain things did happen. Certain things did happen to me, and there's this big dilemma that people have in regards to, that word, that M word. Um, there's a lot of different, opinions people have about that, and I think a lot of women talk about being touched on as a child, but most men don't talk about that, you know, and that's what this episode is about. That's what this episode is about. So if you're new to the Lions Den, welcome, welcome, welcome. Um, the first time I was, ever touched on, the first time I was ever touched on was by a girl. It was by a girl. She was a young girl. We both were young, and I'm from the country. So in the country, they have like the main house, and they have like a small house in the back. The small house in the back, we were in her room, and I remember somehow, some way, she took me back there. And like I remember she made me like go down on her, and we're kids, we're 7, like I know I was like 6, 7, one of those ages. And I remember like I was back there for hours. I was back there for hours, and me being an adult now, it's like I wasn't even doing it right. It's just it's like a even as a kid I knew that wasn't right, you know, but I felt like part of me felt like if I told, they would be like, that's what little boys are supposed to do, or that's what whatever, you know what I mean. So that's why I didn't. But like I said, if you're new to the live, I'm not saying this for cloud, it's because it's part of the series, and I'm just being open and honest and vulnerable about my life, really just accepting myself. So that did happen, and I remember after that happened, we went back into the house, and my stepdaddy came in right at the right time. My stepdad came in right at the right time because I don't know what she was about to do, but it was a bunch of kids in there, and I think she was about to have all of us, do some weird stuff, and come to find out years later, her stepfather had been, like doing certain things to her, which is why she was doing certain things to, to kids, and I happened to be one of those kids. That was during the summertime of like 2009, 2008, 2009, 2008. And I remember because I was going to the 3rd grade. So that happened that summer. And that August, she was in my class, you know, it happened that summer, and that August, she was in my class. So, I'm a kid, and my main point for speaking on this is that a lot of people, they oftentimes talk about how women are, like sexually assaulted, or, little girls, but it's like little boys go through that stuff too. It's honest, it's real, because I was one of them. I was one of them. I was, and I think a common factor that even that I had to like stop in my early adulthood is like y'all know me, y'all know I'm very confident, but this subject really has me stuttering a little bit. So if you're new to the Lions Den, you're not dealing with a simp or a weakie. I'm Mason Jyree, but this subject does make me shake up a little bit. But I I'm really trying to find the words, because I didn't prepare. I knew what I was going to talk about on this episode, but I didn't prepare. You know what I mean? I didn't prepare because these are emotions that I don't even really talk about, if I'm being honest. So part of me, doing what I'm doing, my creativity is doing what I'm doing now, being real, conversing, and I was one of those little boys, that happened to him. One of the things that I was, saying was that one thing I had to put a nip in the bud was like people trying to like sexually like overdo it with me. I can't describe it, but I had to like stop that with people when in my early 20s. Like people, sexual advances, or like like just from it's like it was like a reoccurring thing for me being a kid. Like that was just something that, like, I guess I don't know what was in the sky, but that's something that I experienced, a lot early in my life, early as a child. I did. Um and I remember my mom, something happened, in the summer of me being 12, actually. You know, my neighbor M-word me. My neighbor M-word me, And when my mama found out, she told me, she said, you know, I remember she was crying really, really bad. And y'all forgive me, because I know I'm coming off scatterbrain, but this is trauma, and this is part of me healing. I'm being for real. This is part of me healing, and I have to get it out, you know? And I remember, like, after that situation happened, what my mama found out about my neighbor. She found out about, what my neighbor had, done. It wasn't just me, it was other little boys in the neighborhood as well. But somehow I thought, like, even as a kid, I thought like they wouldn't tell about me, but they did tell. Once the police got involved, they did tell what they told what they did to me, you know. And I remember I walked in the room. My mother was laying, I'm talking all proper and ish, but my mama was laying on the floor, sprawled out. And I remember she was crying, she was sobbing. And I remember she asked me, "Did it happen?" She questioned me all night long, and I told her, "No, no, 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 no." I kept telling her no, like it did not happen. And part of me, I only told her that because I just didn't want to see my mama cry. But it's also like, now here comes the question as far as my sexuality, like what's going on. You know what I mean? So I didn't want to deal with all that. You know what I mean? I didn't want to deal with all that. You know. Um, so time passed. So it's my freshman year in high school or whatever, and I remember certain things would happen between me and my stepdad, and she'd be like, "Well, Mason, I don't care. Mason, I don't care, but because that shit you need to tell, you don't tell." So referring back to me getting touched on because I didn't tell her. So it's like she threw it up in my face. And I think that was one of the biggest things that made me graduate high school early, at 16 years old, because I just wanted to get away from them. Um, if I'm being honest. But I did go through a lot of those things of me like having to really. It's like it's weird because it's like real like intense energy. You know, Scorpio type energy. I'm not a Scorpio, but just that's how I can describe it. Like just it's intense, like sex, money, power. A lot of those dynamics have been like very predominant in my life in the beginning part of it. And it's like I had to really like stand up for myself, because from the trauma I went through as a kid, that side of myself was weaker. It was weaker. Like I had to really like be like, hell nah. Like certain stuff I'm not going for. I'm not doing it. And those are certain things that have played out in my adulthood. Um, the intensity of those moments, I can say, did cultivate me, because I think even as a kid, I always put everything into my art. I always put everything into my creativity. So like as I was going through certain things, I was quiet to the world, but in my head, I was brilliant. You know, um, and I may not have always knew how to communicate myself in group settings and stuff like that with certain people, but I've always been smart. Just didn't have the. I was a kid. I had went through so much. Sometimes I have to remind myself I'm 24. I feel like I'm a 40-year-old man. I feel like just everything that I've been through, my mentality. It's like sometimes I go through this phase where I feel like I feel like I'm in this era where it's like I feel so mature on the inside, but I'm 24. I look 24. I look young. I look good. You know, the Android quality dims the quality a little bit. But once you get into me, it's like this nigga is fine. I'm fine. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's really just that. This episode was, really quick. It's nothing to be. It's nothing for me to be, to just. How do I put it? Just for me to get it out. It's for me to get it out. You know. I'm real. I'm honest. I'm gonna always accept myself, even if I haven't before in the past. So I'm gonna always keep growing. And I think I'm using. No, not I think I am. I'm using this to keep growing. My creativity. Always before, in the years before of me making music and dropping certain things, I never went live. I never did this. I never would have talked about things like this ever. But the past year of me doing this has really opened doors for me, and I'm grateful. You know. And listen, I didn't just do this for that. I did it, and that just so happened to be what happened. Because I am in my life, I always look at the reason why, for the reason why, you know, and that just is what it is. And everything is great. Everything is great in the Lions Den. We're getting bigger and bigger. I'm working on new singles. Um, I'm working on a business degree, to coincide with what I'm building for myself. Y'all know I just launched my LLC and everything like that. So, we're getting bigger and bigger. But I have to keep it real. I have to keep it hot and sexy and spicy like I do. I know this is a little bit low vibrational, because it is. But more episodes, we're gonna, keep getting bigger and bigger and keep elevating and raise the people's vibration. You know what I mean? Raise us up. I don't want to tear y'all down. I want to build y'all up with me. Because not to get too deep, but everything is in everything. Everything is in everything, y'all. So yeah. I'm gonna lie, I feel the urge to cry right now. Yeah, so everything is in everything. Okay. And we just gotta make sure that I just wanna make sure that I uplift the people. I wanna make sure that my purpose, I'm doing something great. You know? It's like deeper than making art for me right now. It's like I just wanna make sure that I'm on the right path to success. And I wanna make sure that I'm uplifting people. I wanna be known as somebody who people respect, and I uplifted people, you know. So everything that I give y'all is from the heart. Everything that I give y'all is to heal y'all. It's never to tear y'all down. I want to lead a massive amount of people to just elevating, to doing them. Okay, let me collect myself because I'm getting aggravated. I had to turn to the side camera, turn to the side camera, the imaginary side camera right now, and collect myself because I don't do this. I cry in public. I don't cry in public, and I don't do But this is new for me. This is new for me. But it's a part of I'm realizing that honesty and being authentic in myself is a part of my brand, and I love that because I ain't got to put on. But I'm using this to heal. I'm using this to heal. I'm using this to continue elevating. And I can't wait for my album to drop because I'm putting everything that I've been through, not literally, as of right now, because I've been through hella shit, but everything that I've been through this past year that's going into this album, I'm putting it in there. And when I perform these songs at these festivals, at Atlanta Pride in October, I'm going to tear down. I'm going to put on a show because, yeah, I love your Lions. It's your boy Mason Jyree. If you're new to the Lions, then welcome, welcome, welcome. If you are not new, then you already know what's going on here. And what's going on? We're getting bigger and bigger. We're getting better and better. And we are shitting, and I mean shitting turds on any and everybody that said we aren't who we are. I love you, Lions. And abonne-toi. Shout out to everybody in the comments.